Welcome to Crushed Husband. Please like the video and subscribe. Let's begin. It started with small things. At first, I told myself I was imagining it. Amber had been distant lately, but we had our ups and downs, right? It wasn't anything to freak out over. She had always been the type to bury herself in her work when things were stressful. And with her project taking up more of her time, I figured that's all it was. But when she started staying out later, I noticed. Just a few minutes here, an hour there. But it added up. I didn't ask questions right away. I didn't want to look insecure, paranoid. It was probably nothing. She'd always been a bit of a workaholic, and maybe that was just her way of dealing with stress. It wasn't like we hadn't been through hard shit before, and we always came out the other side. We had been together for almost 5 years. Our bond was solid. At least, that's what I kept telling myself. Then came the phone calls, the late night ones. When I'd ask her who it was, she'd just wave me off, muttering something about work stuff. I didn't press it, but it gnawed at me. Something about her tone didn't sit right, like she was hiding something. Still, I didn't want to jump to conclusions. I didn't want to make a scene, so I tried to let it go. One night, she told me she'd be home late again. Another project. Another deadline. I should have said something, but I didn't. Maybe I was afraid of what it might mean. Instead, I mumbled, "Okay, I'll see you when you get home," and watched her go. I tried to tell myself that it was fine. I trusted her. And besides, if it really was something, I'd figure it out, right? That night, I stood by the window, watching the clock tick past midnight. I didn't want to feel this way. I didn't want to be the guy who suspected his wife. But something in me couldn't shake the feeling that something was off. Something was slipping. I just didn't know what yet. And that thought, that little seed of doubt, was the hardest part. A few days later, I found the receipt. Amber had left her coat on the couch when she headed out one morning, and I, dumb, stupid me, decided to check the pocket. I don't know why I thought there'd be anything there. Maybe I was hoping for some kind of proof I could hold on to, something that would explain the creeping feeling in my gut. It was for an expensive restaurant, somewhere upscale I didn't recognize. A place way out of our price range. Not something she'd go to alone, not unless it was for business, but even then, Amber never splurged. We weren't those kinds of people. I stared at it for a while, my mind running in circles. Maybe it's nothing. Maybe it's a client dinner, or something with work. But the more I looked at the receipt, the more it felt like a slap in the face. I stuffed it back in the pocket, not sure what to do with it. I had to confront her, right? But I didn't. Not then. It was easier to pretend it didn't bother me. Easier to ignore the sick feeling that twisted in my stomach every time she wasn't home. Every time I saw her distracted, pulling away just a little more. The real kicker came a few nights later. Amber was in the other room, talking in a low voice. Her tone was different, too soft, too careful. I couldn't make out the words, but I could hear the shift in her voice. I tried to focus on whatever I was doing, but the sound of her talking, her whispering, pulled at me. I knew she wasn't alone. I didn't need to hear the other person's voice to know that. Then I heard it. The voice was familiar. Too familiar. It was a guy's voice, low and smooth, but something about it nagged at me. My brain was scrambling to place it, but I didn't want to think too much about it. I didn't want to know. I couldn't let myself go down that road. It was one conversation, one moment. Maybe it didn't mean anything. Still, I couldn't shake the thought that something wasn't right. My mind started to fixate, obsessing over every little detail, the late nights, the sudden increase in her phone calls, the way she'd become more distant. At first, I kept telling myself it was just work, that I was overthinking it. But that voice, that damn voice, kept running in my head. It made me feel like a damn fool, but I couldn't stop, not yet. Then, one afternoon, we went to the grocery store. Amber was on her phone the entire time, barely looking at me. She'd never been that glued to her screen before. She always had her phone on her, sure, but this was different. This time, she wouldn't let me see what she was texting. Not a glimpse, not a word. I caught her a few times, her face flushed with some kind of energy I couldn't place. She was laughing, for God's sake, in the middle of the store, laughing at something on her phone. "Who's that?" I asked, trying to keep my tone casual. She quickly shoved the phone back in her purse, looking up at me with wide eyes. "Just a friend," she said, her voice a little too bright. "Just a friend?" The words hit me like a hammer. There was no mistaking it. I knew something was off. I felt like I was walking through mud, like I was sinking deeper and deeper into some hole I couldn't climb out of. I was trying to avoid jumping to conclusions. Maybe I'm wrong, maybe she's just stressed or distracted, maybe I'm being paranoid. But the more I tried to push it down, the worse it felt. Still, I didn't say anything. I told myself it wasn't the right time to confront her. I didn't want to start some fight that might not even be worth it. She always came home. She always said she loved me, but I couldn't ignore the feeling gnawing at me, the one that made my stomach turn every time I saw her slipping away bit by bit. I told myself I'd focus on work. It was easier to keep my head down, easier to pretend everything was fine. But the truth was, I was scared of what I might find if I pushed harder. So I buried it, for now. It happened one evening just after Amber got home from another late meeting. She came through the door, and I could smell it immediately, something sharp, unfamiliar. A cologne, or maybe a fragrance, but definitely not something I recognized. My stomach sank, and for a second, I thought I might choke on the weight of it. "Hey," I said, trying to keep my voice steady. "What's that smell?" Amber froze for a beat, then shrugged a little too quickly. "Oh, it's nothing. Just something one of my colleagues was wearing at the work event tonight. I must have picked it up in the air." Bullshit. The words hung there between us, unspoken but undeniable. I didn't buy it, not for a second. She was trying to brush it off, trying to make it sound casual. But it wasn't casual. The scent lingered too strongly. Too much like something intimate, something personal, not something that would just rub off from a random person at a work event. I didn't say anything else. I didn't ask, didn't press. The moment felt fragile, too fragile. I could see it in her eyes, the way she was almost pleading with me to let it go, and I did, for now. But that night, I couldn't sleep. My mind wouldn't shut off. Every little thing that had felt off before suddenly seemed to click into place. The phone calls, the late nights, the distance between us that had only grown. And now this, the scent of another man clinging to her. I didn't confront her. I couldn't. Something told me that if I did, it would break everything, and I wasn't ready for that. But I also wasn't going to sit here, pretending everything was fine anymore. I wasn't going to ignore it. Instead, I spent the next 2 weeks preparing, quietly, secretly, pulling away. I started taking cash out of the bank. I changed my passwords, my account details, every little thing that would make it harder for Amber to track me down if it came to that. I didn't want to leave. I didn't want things to end like this, but it was clear as day now. Something had shifted and I couldn't keep pretending it hadn't. Amber didn't notice. Or if she did, she didn't say anything. She kept going about her business, getting home late, acting like everything was normal. I could feel the weight of the space between us growing, but she never called me on it. She was too wrapped up in her own world, too wrapped up in whatever else was happening. The house started to feel different, empty. It was like we were two strangers living under the same roof. I didn't know who she was anymore. I didn't know who I was either, in this house where we'd once been happy. I was becoming a ghost in my own life. I threw myself into work, buried myself in tasks, just to fill the silence. I spent hours grading papers or preparing lesson plans, just to avoid the nagging feeling that I couldn't escape. Every time Amber came home late or left early, I felt something else eroding inside me. Trust, respect, love. All of it slipping away piece by piece. But I didn't say anything. Not yet. Every day felt like a countdown, the hours ticking away towards something I couldn't control. But I was preparing for it. When it happened, I wouldn't be blindsided. I would be ready. And I'd make damn sure I had nothing left to lose. I moved everything, all of it. The savings, the accounts, the things that tied me to this life. I didn't want to leave anything behind that could lead her to me. No one would know where I went or how to find me. I was careful, too careful. Every transaction, every password change, every detail in place. Amber was gone when I did it. I waited until she was at one of her late meetings. The ones she kept claiming were work-related. I didn't care where she was anymore. I was done looking for excuses, done making up reasons to explain her behavior. All that mattered was that I was leaving, and I was doing it quietly. I packed a bag, something small, enough to get me through a few days. Clothes, a couple of personal items, and nothing else. I didn't need much. The rest of my life could stay here, in this house, with the woman who had stopped being my wife a long time ago. I didn't want to talk to her. I didn't want to have that confrontation, the one I knew would break both of us. I'd already watched her slip away, bit by bit. What was left to say? That night, I sat at the dinner table and tried to hold it together. She sat across from me, talking about her latest project, her work life, her day. Her voice had a softness to it that was almost foreign, and I couldn't help but notice how her phone buzzed every few minutes. She'd glance down at it, checking the screen, then quickly shove it away like it wasn't important. I didn't say anything. I didn't ask who it was, I didn't want to know. But I watched her, every little movement, every shift of her expression. I was trying to memorize her, to lock away the version of her I thought I'd known. The woman I used to laugh with, who'd stay up late with me talking about stupid things. The one who'd kiss me goodnight and tell me everything would be okay. That woman was gone, though. In her place was someone else. Someone I didn't recognize. When dinner was over, I stood up and started cleaning the table. Amber went off to the kitchen, still distracted by her phone, her eyes flicking back and forth between me and the screen. I didn't say anything. I just moved around her, silently. It wasn't until later, after she had gone to bed, that I did it. I took off my wedding ring, our wedding ring, and placed it on the nightstand next to her phone. I just sat there for a minute, looking at it. It felt like the end of something, a decision I couldn't take back. I didn't wait for her to come back to the room. I didn't wait for a reason to say goodbye. I just left. In the early hours of the morning, when everything was still and quiet, I walked out the front door, my bag slung over my shoulder. No goodbye, no words, just absence. The note was simple, almost too simple. I know. Enjoy your new life. I didn't leave her anything else. No explanation, no conversation, nothing to hold on to but that note and the ring. I didn't need to say anything more. She would figure it out, or she wouldn't. The house was silent behind me as I stepped out into the night, and for the first time in a long time, I felt free. The city was different, bigger, louder, but also somehow quieter in its own way. I found a small apartment in a building that had more people than I'd ever want to know, but that was the point. It was just anonymous enough. I started a new job in construction, physical, exhausting work that left no room for distractions. No one cared about my past, and I liked it that way. I changed my phone number as soon as I could, got a prepaid phone, tossed the old one into a trash can a few miles away. I erased every trace of my old life. No social media accounts, no email forwarding, no reason for anyone to find me. The old Jason was gone. The peace was overwhelming at first. I could go a whole day without talking to anyone. I wasn't sure if that was something to be thankful for or just strange. The silence felt like a weight lifting off my chest. I wasn't watching my back anymore, wasn't waiting for the next fight, the next lie. I didn't have to worry about who I'd walk past in the grocery store or whether someone knew my name. I didn't have to wonder when Amber would come home, or if I was going to catch her in another lie. Some nights I'd lie awake in the tiny apartment, staring at the ceiling, wondering how long it would take Amber to notice. I imagined her coming home to an empty house, seeing my wedding ring on the nightstand, the note I left behind. How long would it take her to connect the dots? How long before she figured out I was gone? The thought of it was oddly satisfying. She wouldn't come looking for me. She wouldn't care enough to. And even if she did, I wasn't sure I'd want her to find me. Not anymore. I had control now. I wasn't a victim anymore. Months passed, and I settled into the routine of my new life. I woke up, went to work, came home, and did it all over again. There was nothing dramatic about it, nothing to keep my mind occupied except the weight of my own thoughts. Some evenings I'd sit down and go through the box of old photos. Photos of Amber and me, memories of our better days. But there was no ache in my chest, no sting behind my eyes. Not anymore. I looked at the pictures and felt nothing but detachment. It wasn't even sadness. It was more like a quiet relief, like I was looking at someone else's life, someone else's mistake. In this new life, I didn't have to pretend anymore. I didn't have to be the husband who kept hoping, the guy who'd sit at the dinner table and stare at his wife's phone, wondering who she was texting. I was free of all of it. The past was gone. And that, strangely enough, was all I needed. I stepped out of the cafe, the midday sun sharp against my face, the noise of the street a background hum as I made my way down the sidewalk. I wasn't paying attention to anyone around me, just another day in this anonymous city. And then I saw her, Amber. She was standing across the street, staring at me with wide, desperate eyes. I froze for a second, feeling a cold wave of recognition. She looked different. Her hair was messy, and her clothes were unkempt, like she hadn't cared much about how she looked in a while. She was thinner too, and worn down. There was something frantic in her posture, like she hadn't slept in days. I didn't feel a rush of anger, or relief, or even a twinge of regret. All I felt was cold indifference. I could have kept walking, but I didn't. Part of me was curious about what she thought she could say, curious about what this moment would look like. Without saying a word, I kept walking. I didn't acknowledge her. "Jason!" Her voice cracked, her breath coming out in quick, ragged gasps. She rushed toward me, her shoes clicking on the pavement as she closed the distance between us. I didn't stop. She grabbed my arm, pulling me to a halt. I didn't flinch, didn't react. I just turned slowly to face her. Her face was a mess, tear-streaked and desperate. "Please, just let me explain. Please, I cut her off before she could get any further, my voice flat. "You don't get to explain anymore." She blinked, taken aback by the finality in my tone, like she wasn't expecting it. The shock on her face was almost more than I could stomach. I don't know what happened. I made a mistake. Brent, I didn't care. I didn't care about her excuses, her guilt, her broken words. Not anymore. "It doesn't matter," I said. The words came out like a weight, heavy and hollow. "You had your chance. You threw it all away." Her lips trembled, eyes searching mine like she was looking for something. Remorse, forgiveness, anything that would give her back what we'd lost. But I had nothing left for her. "You left me," I said, my voice quieter now, but no less certain. "You chose that life. I'm not here to make it right. I'm not here to fix anything." She stepped back like I'd slapped her, her hands falling helplessly at her sides. "Jason, please!" But I didn't wait for her to finish. I didn't need to hear it. She didn't get the luxury of any more time from me. She had already taken everything she could. I turned on my heel and started walking again, slowly, deliberately. Behind me, I could hear her voice, small and broken. But I didn't turn around. I didn't need to. I'd already made my decision a long time ago. I didn't owe her anything anymore. With every step, the weight of everything lifted just a little more. By the time I reached the next block, she was nothing but a shadow behind me, and that's exactly where she would stay. I walked on without another word. I didn't expect to see her again. A week passed before I was heading out to grab coffee, and there she was, sitting on the steps of my building, small, hunched over like she was trying to disappear. Her face was hidden in her hands at first, but when she saw me, she stood up. "Jason." Her voice was raw, like it had been torn from her throat. She didn't look like the confident, assured woman who had once left me behind. Now she looked lost, a shadow of the person I'd known. I wanted to walk away. I could have just kept going, kept the door between us closed, but something stopped me. I didn't know if it was curiosity or just the fact that I was tired of running from everything. "Please," she begged, her hands trembling. "Please just listen to me." For once I studied her for a moment. She looked so damn broken, it almost felt like she wasn't the same person. But she was. I could see it in her eyes. Those eyes that had once been full of warmth, now frantic and wide with fear. "Fine," I said. "Come inside." We went up to my apartment. I kept the door cracked just enough that I could leave if I needed to. I wasn't about to let her pull me back in, no matter how much she seemed to need me. She sat on the couch, hands clasped tightly together. She was shaking, almost vibrating with anxiety. "I've made a mess of everything," she started, her voice quieter now, almost pleading. "Brent, he's a con artist. I didn't know. I didn't know what he was, who he really was. He took everything, my money, my trust, my life. And now I'm being hunted." I stayed quiet, not trusting my voice, not knowing if I believed her. It didn't feel real. She had thrown me away, replaced me so easily, and now she was here, asking me for help. The idea of feeling sorry for her felt like weakness, but there was something in her story that stuck, something that made me pause. She was in trouble, real trouble. "I thought I could control it," Amber continued, her voice cracking. "I thought I was better than him, smarter. But he had me fooled. I don't know what happened. He drained my accounts, took everything I had, and now he's disappeared and people are looking for me. They've been sending threats." I looked at her, keeping my face neutral. "And you think I can help?" Her eyes filled with desperation. "You have to. Jason, I told him about you, about your ability to disappear. I thought it would make him jealous, make him fight for me. But now I see how stupid that was. He got angry. I don't know what to do. I don't know where to go. I felt the weight of her words press on me. It wasn't just about betrayal anymore. It was something far worse. I wasn't just angry at her. I wasn't even sure I felt anything at all about her anymore. But this was different. Amber's mistakes had gone far beyond her own recklessness. Now she was dragging me into a mess that I had no part in. I had no love left for her, but I couldn't ignore what she was saying. She was in danger, and whether I liked it or not, I was tied to her past. "Look," I said, leaning forward, my voice steady. "You've already dragged me into your shit once. I'm not doing it again unless you're clear about what's going on." She nodded, wiping away a tear, but it didn't feel like she was looking for sympathy. She was just trying to survive. "I never meant for any of this to happen," she whispered, "but I need your help." I was silent for a moment. My mind was racing, calculating everything I knew. The moment she mentioned Brent and the way he had disappeared, something clicked. I wasn't sure exactly how, but I knew that I wasn't dealing with a small-time scam anymore. This wasn't just about Amber or her mistakes. It was about something bigger. "I'll help," I said, finally. The words were cold, but they felt like the right decision. "But you're gonna have to trust me. This goes the way I say it goes. No more lies, no more bullshit." Amber looked relieved, but I could see the fear still in her eyes. She wasn't out of the woods yet, and neither was I. "I understand," she said softly. And as I looked at her, I realized that I wasn't just cleaning up her mess. I was stepping into a whole new kind of nightmare. Whatever Brent was, whatever he had become, it was worse than anything I could have imagined. And now I was involved. There was no backing out. I didn't trust Amber anymore, but I needed her to do exactly what I told her. There was no room for mistakes. I gave her a burner phone, something cheap, disposable, and impossible to trace. I told her to text Brent, pretending like she was desperate for help. "Tell him you need to meet," I said. "Tell him you're scared. Make him think you're alone, that he's got you cornered." She hated every second of it. I could see it in her eyes. But she didn't argue. She did as I asked, each word of the message dripping with manufactured vulnerability. I wasn't sure if she was trying to convince herself to, or if she was playing the role of the victim to keep Brent interested. Either way, she was going to bait him, and I was going to watch. We arranged a meeting at a rundown motel just outside the city. Neutral ground. Cheap enough to be unremarkable, just the kind of place Brent would think he could slip in and out of without anyone taking notice. I didn't want to make it easy for him. I didn't want to give him the chance to escape. Amber arrived first. I watched from a distance, hidden behind the peeling paint of an old, rusted truck parked in the lot. She was fidgeting with her hair, her hands trembling as she clutched the burner phone. She was scared, sweat beading on her forehead, her movements jerky, like she wasn't sure she could go through with it. I couldn't tell if it was fear of Brent or fear of me that had her on edge, but I didn't care. She was playing her part. I just had to make sure this worked. Minutes passed before Brent showed up. He pulled into the parking lot in a dark sedan, a sleek, too-perfect car that looked out of place in a place like this. He stepped out, confident, like he had the whole world under control. But I noticed the flicker in his eyes, that little twitch of nerves when he looked around, scanning the lot before he moved toward Amber. I watched him carefully, taking in every detail. He was calm, too calm, almost like he was pretending to be. There was something wrong with the way he was carrying himself, like he was putting on a show to hide the cracks in his mask. I'd seen it before. Guys like him don't act nervous unless they're hiding something, or someone's already got the jump on them. Amber tried to greet him with the soft smile she'd used in the text, but I could tell she wasn't really present in the moment. She was thinking too hard, second-guessing herself. She was still caught between the person she used to be and the mess she'd made of her life. I waited a few more moments before I stepped out from the shadows, my feet crunching softly on the gravel as I moved toward them. Brent's head snapped in my direction, his eyes flashing with recognition. He didn't react immediately, but I saw it in the way his hands tightened around the straps of his bag, the sudden tension in his shoulders. He knew who I was. "You," he muttered, like he hadn't expected to see me here. His jaw tightened and he glanced at Amber, then back to me. "What the hell is this?" I stood there, calm, collected, letting the silence stretch. I didn't say a word. I wasn't going to give him the satisfaction of seeing me sweat. He took a step forward, trying to regain some of that control, but I stayed still, not backing down. "You want something, don't you?" I said, finally breaking the quiet. "You came here for a reason." You don't just show up at a motel at a time like this without something to hide. Brent's eyes flicked over to Amber again, and I could see the gears turning in his head. He was calculating, trying to figure out his next move. "Listen, man," he said, forcing a smile that didn't reach his eyes. "This isn't what you think it is. I don't know what your problem is, but—" I cut him off, my voice flat and hard. "You want to disappear, don't you? I can help with that." I didn't wait for him to answer. "But you'll pay for it. You'll give back everything you've stolen from her. All of it." The words hung in the air. Amber flinched, her gaze flicking between us. Brent stood there for a moment, not saying anything. He didn't move, didn't break. But I could see it in his eyes. He understood what I was saying. He was caught. "You think I'm just going to give you everything?" Brent sneered, but I could see the uncertainty now, the cracks in his confidence. "You're out of your mind." "I know how to make you disappear," I said calmly. "I'm not asking for your cooperation. I'm offering you a choice. Give it back, or I make sure you never see the light of day again." "Your move." Brent's eyes darkened, but there was no anger in them, just the cold recognition that he was up against someone who wouldn't back down. He studied me for a moment longer, then nodded once, not in defeat, but in silent understanding. "I'll give it back," he said, his voice tight. "But this isn't over." "I'm counting on that," I said, my words like a knife. Amber's face softened slightly, but I didn't look at her. I kept my eyes on Brent, watching as he realized he had no choice but to comply. I didn't wait for another word. I turned and walked away, the sound of gravel crunching beneath my boots, knowing the game was just beginning. The meeting with Brent was quick. No drawn-out speeches, no drama. I made it clear. He was going to wire the money back to Amber's account. Every last penny. The sooner he did it, the sooner he could get lost again. "Do it now," I told him, my voice steady. There was no room for negotiation, no second chances. Brent tried to talk his way out of it, tried to convince me that this was all a misunderstanding, that he didn't owe anyone anything, but I wasn't buying it. He could whine, plead, make empty promises all he wanted. It didn't matter. The money was going back, or I would make sure his life became a nightmare. He pulled out his phone, looking for a way to make the transfer. I kept my eyes on him, never blinking. There wasn't a second of doubt in me. I knew exactly what I was doing. Amber stood a few feet away, watching the entire exchange, her expression a mix of disbelief and relief. The silence stretched between us until Brent finally confirmed the transaction had gone through. "It's done," he said, not looking at either of us. "Good," I said, nodding. "Now, you're done." Brent smirked, trying to hold on to some shred of his cocky bravado. "You think this is over? You think I'm just going to disappear?" I didn't answer right away. Instead, I took one last look at him, letting the silence hang in the air. "You're wrong," I said. "It's over for you." I made sure of that. I turned on my heel and started walking away, leaving him standing there with nothing but his empty words. Amber didn't follow me. She stayed behind, probably waiting for me to say something, to give her some kind of comfort, but I wasn't about to give her that. I didn't owe her anything anymore. I left the parking lot and didn't look back. The past was done. All of it. The lies, the betrayal, everything that had once mattered to me was gone. The next morning, I packed up the last of my things. I didn't leave anything behind. The apartment was empty now, just a shell of a life that wasn't mine anymore. When I was done, I didn't hesitate. I walked out with my bag slung over my shoulder, keys in hand, and drove off. For the first time in years, I felt free. I smiled as I drove, the road ahead clear and wide. There was no more looking over my shoulder, no more wondering when everything would fall apart. I was finally free of everything, and I had no intention of ever looking back.